So welcome everyone to this event about climate assemblies organized by Civic Tech Sweden under the Open Gov Week that's going on right now, with a lot of other events and initiatives around participatory democracy. And here in front of you, you have the agenda for today. So we're going to have two really exciting speakers talking about examples of a citizen assembly, a climate assembly in Denmark, and then Klimatriksdagen in Sweden. And later we're going to have a panel discussion where you're going to be able to ask any questions that you have. And of course, feel free to continuously ask questions if you have any in the chat. We have our lovely colleagues that are going to help you guys to answer any questions. And then later on, we're going to have a lot of room as well to answer them. And my name is Sanna, by the way, and I work at Digitum Lab. And maybe you want to introduce yourself as well, Pierre?
Yeah, my name is Pierre. I work with Sanna at Digitum Lab, and I'm also part of Civic Tech Sweden.
Yeah, and we're really excited to have you here. So let's get started. So I'm just going to do a quick introduction to a little bit about us and why we're here today before we start listening to our speakers. So let's see. So Digitum Lab, we're a participatory democracy lab based in Sweden, and we support municipalities, public institutions with different types of participatory processes to engage citizens. And so we're working with a lot of different cities around Sweden, but also internationally, and do a lot of workshops together with municipalities and cities to help create different types of processes. And citizens' assemblies is one of those examples of a process that we work with and that we study internationally. So we're really excited about this, being able to have this event where we're going to be able to talk more about one of our favorite democracy methods that we really believe in. And Civic Tech Sweden is a network. It's basically a network that gathers people that want to work with technology for the common good. And it's a mix of the community, democracy, transparency, and everything basically that connects with Open Gov Week and connects with this topic of climate assemblies. So everyone that's isn't already in the network in Civic Tech Sweden and is participating now is welcome to join. Maybe Pernilla and Matthias, you can add some information about that in the chat for where people can join the forum that you have, for example, if people want that. And so the topic of climate assemblies, you kind of have to understand the context of it. So a couple of years ago, basically, we started to see a growing movement for participatory democracy. This picture is taken in Spain, 2011, sorry, from the economic crisis that they had in Spain and a lot of other countries in Europe, where people started gathering in the squares around Spain and kind of got tired about being evicted from their homes, being unemployed, a lot of young people that were unemployed, water got privatized, energy got privatized, a lot of people became frustrated about the corruption in their government, and they started gathering and talking about how they wanted to solve issues and started to use different type of digital tools to connect to each other and then co-construct policies to basically make the society better for people. And that's just one of many examples. It spread throughout the world, and a lot of countries started to kind of initiate different types of other participatory democracy processes. Here you can see pictures from Barcelona, from Paris, from Chicago and New York. A lot of cities started to see that, okay, we kind of really need to change up how we're doing democracy, because we see that a lot of people aren't engaging in decision-making processes. In Sweden, for example, only 2% of the population is active in a political party. And today that's the main way of being part of a decision-making process. And of those 2%, very few are young, women, or born outside of Sweden, which is not representative for our country. And that's not only Sweden, it's the same in a lot of other countries, that the people that are engaging in decision-making processes aren't representative for our population. And so one way of dealing with this is actually climate assemblies or citizen assemblies that is based on representativeness. And citizens assemblies, which I'm going to explain. So climate assemblies is one of the ways you can do a citizen assembly. So it's basically a citizen assembly focused on the climate. But the general term for citizens assemblies, it's basically citizens randomly selected based on demographic criteria, so that you know that they represent the city or the country that you're engaging in. And they gather for a couple of weekends, spread out over 6 months or a year or so, and they create recommendations for their government. And here you can see a couple of pictures from France, for example, where they've done a lot of citizen assemblies, both on a national level and local level. And so that's actually a way of dealing with the problem that we have with democracy today, that it is not representative, that the people that are engaging in decision-making process aren't representative for our country. And it's a problem, because we need people with different lived experiences that comes from different backgrounds, and that can shape policies together. And we believe in collective intelligence, which is when people come together, we are more intelligent than if we stand alone. And so a climate assembly is, like I said, it's basically a citizen assembly that's focused on the climate to create recommendations for solving climate change. And it's been happening in a lot of countries. So not just in France that I mentioned, but also in Ireland and the UK, Norway, Denmark, and more are popping up. We just saw Washington in the US is doing the first climate assembly, for example. And it's a way of engaging people in an issue that's important for the entire population in the world, which is the climate. And you're gonna get more details about how a climate assembly works from our speakers. We have also a Swedish example, which is the closest example that we can find today. So far, Sweden hasn't done any climate assembly or citizen assembly. So Klimatriksdagen is an initiative. It's just an example of how citizens can engage in producing proposals and ideas against climate change. And so we're going to have a speaker, Karin from Klimatriksdagen, later that's going to talk about that. But yeah, so far, no climate assembly or citizen assembly in Sweden, which we hope to change by this event, and creating more knowledge about what climate assemblies are, and maybe connecting you guys together to create one. So on Thursday, we're going to have a second workshop, which is going to be more practical, and it's going to be focused on creating your own climate assembly, and it's going to be in Swedish. So anyone that's interested in knowing the details of how to create an assembly after this event, maybe after you learned about some examples of how it works, feel free to join. It's still an opportunity to register for the event, and we're going to have a practical workshop where we're going to go through the details and create our own assemblies. So yeah, welcome to that one as well. But now I'm going to hand over to Katrin, that's going to talk more about the Danish climate assembly that they've had. So welcome, Katrin.
Thank you, Sana. Yes, I'm Katrin. I'm connecting from Copenhagen. I work for the Danish Board of Technology, and we have been asked by the Danish Ministry for Energy and Climate to facilitate the Danish Climate Assembly for the last 6 months. So together with my director, Lars Klyver, I've been the lead facilitator for this great work. And the Danish Board of Technology is like Civic Tech a little bit. I think we are involved in democratic technology development, and we have a lot of methods we use for engagement of stakeholders, of citizens in the development of the society. We work on a national level in Denmark, but also very much engaged in an international or especially European level. Some of the big European projects. In this connection, maybe also worth mentioning that the Danish Board of Technology developed the Consensus Conference, which could be said to be the forerunner for the Citizen Assembly. It builds on the same methodological principles, part of the deliberative democratic models that the Citizen Assembly also belongs to. And we developed that in the 80s and 90s and are still using the method. It's a citizen assembly in a smaller states with only 15 or 14 or 15, 16 citizens, but involved in the same process. Anyway, I myself, I'm not a climate activist, and I started somewhere on the same page with the members of the Citizen Assembly as concerning the climate case. I was not, I lived an okay, sustainable lifestyle in Copenhagen, but I was not so much into the technical solutions on the climate struggle. So I've been on the same educational journey, so to say, as the 99 members of the Climate Assembly, and it has been really interesting. Okay, I didn't share my screen. It's coming now. And I suppose you see it the correct way.
Yes, we see it.
Yeah, great, thank you. Citizens Assembly, like Sandra said, seem to be more popular, widespread in recent years. Started in 2016 in Ireland, and last year in the UK, France, Denmark came, Scotland, and Denmark is now going to develop theirs, and also cities, different places. And it seems to be a great method to bring solutions to this great climate crisis we all find ourselves in. And it's a method to involve citizens to answer a question or to solve a problem that could be of a local or national or global relevance, and in a way that represents citizens like they reflect the society they work in from all walks of life. So they are randomly selected and they are invited to give recommendations to the politicians. They deliberate among themselves, and they invite experts to have dialogue with them and to enlighten them on the topic. That's a process in overall, but all these examples on the screen, they have done it in a different ways. There's a set of methods. OECD has developed some principles for deliberative democracy, but still concerning design, scope, selection criteria, design, all these examples are different. So I will tell you about the Danish Climate Assembly. We started working in October last year, and the Climate Assembly just finished the recommendations, the first phase in April this year. And they were asked to work with this overall question, to give input to how Denmark can meet its legally binding target of 70% reduction of greenhouse emissions by 2030. That was the overall task, and then it was up to the Citizen Assembly itself to choose topics and issues and dilemmas to work with that they found relevance within this big topic. This shows you just in brief. I'll not go so much into detail, but the whole organization around the Climate Assembly, just to show that we have 99 randomly selected members of the Assembly. It was commissioned by the Parliament, and it was done through a Climate Act that was adopted in Denmark in 2019. And the target of the 70% reduction comes from the Climate Act. And the Act also mentioned that there should be a Citizen Assembly on climate to help government doing that. So the Citizen Assembly reports to the Climate and Energy Committee. They did that last month. And the Ministry for Climate and Energy is the secretariat. The Danish Board of Technology has been hired to do the assembly meetings, the design, the methods, the facilitation, and all the meetings. Then there is a planning group consisting of 5 members, assembly members, the Danish Board of Technology, and the Ministry that is a day-to-day planning group. Then we have an academic panel, one expert lead from the university. We have experts being called in to make presentations for the assembly, and we have independent researchers following the process. The assembly members, like I said, have chosen what themes to work with, and they have met some of the utmost experts from Denmark in this climate issues, so they have been inspired to take the fight up with all these big issues. So they have worked with transport, they have worked with land and farming resources, taxes, behavioral changes, and the green infrastructure. Some of the big issues are challenges, but they have also brought up bottom-up suggestions for issues like they have been very concerned about the whole engagement issue and the public education in this field. So this is an example of an issue that was brought up by the working groups in the assembly. The results were 19 texts, and within these, under this 19 texts, there was a range of recommendations. Under each topic, there was like 2, 5, 10 recommendations. But it's 19 independent texts that describes the background for this challenge, the assessment of the assembly, what is to be done, and then some concrete recommendations. Some of the examples have been listed here, and if I just mention some concrete examples for recommendations, for instance, is the carbon tax, which is a big debate in Denmark and has also been in the assembly, that the citizen assembly suggests to introduce more carbon taxes. I know that in Sweden you are one of the leading countries in having high carbon taxes, and the citizen assembly kind of looked at directions to recommend a quite high carbon tax for everybody in Denmark. One of the other examples is like suggesting to electrify all public transport and all taxis before 2030. And in that way, there's a range of recommendations that was handed into the politicians some weeks ago. How did the assembly members reach to these results, recommendations? This shows the process, the working process. They have spent hours and hours to deliberate, to discuss, to meet experts, and to work on that recommendation text. They started with a full weekend back in October and finished with a full weekend here in March. And then they had, that is the dark green, they had the light green evening sessions of 3 hours, like a Tuesday evening, a Thursday evening, where they continued working. Some of the meetings, they invited more experts to hear about their perspectives, and some of the evenings they just worked in smaller groups with their text. And then they have been meeting in the gray bubbles is thematic groups, where part of the assembly members, 20 or 10 or 8 assembly members, were divided into groups working with, for instance, transport, farming, engagement, and from a brainstorm with more than 120 topics, they deliberated on them, and they merged some of them, they canceled some of them, and in the end they ended up with this 19 recommendations that were voted yes by the assembly to pass on to the politicians. So it has been a long, very intense process. They have spent, I think, 50 hours, we counted together, deliberating over a span of 6 months. And when we asked them in the end, then was your time and effort worth it? The answer was yes. As you can see, 27 members said very much worth it. 15 said a lot, and 9 said yes, some it was worth it, some. Nobody found it was not worth it, and 4 didn't respond, 2 didn't know. So our experience was that the members really gained from being a part of this process. This is some of the quotes in Danish, saying that it has been very educational, exciting, awesome, and exhausting. That was the overall expression. We did all this online. Maybe I forgot to say it was 100% online. So of course it was also Corona adapted version of the Citizen Assembly, but however, it worked fine. We were kind of experimenting here, like Sana said. This Citizen Assembly is still on new grounds, so we were trying to have the Danish experiment in with the Citizen Assembly in a Corona time. And the Citizen Assembly is having the second phase starting from the autumn. We don't know by now how the process will be. It's a ministry to decide that, but there will be something of some kind following this. So this is just in brief what I wanted to say today. I'm very much looking forward to the discussions later and to hear also Karin's presentation.
Thank you, Catherine. That was so interesting. And I saw that we got a lot of questions in the chat as well. And we're going to be able to answer them in the panel discussion that we have later. That's going to go into more detail about the recruitment process and the other questions that I saw popped up. So thank you very much, Catherine. It was really interesting. And now we're going to hear from Karin from Klimatriksdagen. Are you ready to present, Karin?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Sanna, and thanks, Catherine. That was very interesting to hear about the Danish example. So my name is Karin Sundby. I'm a member of the board of Klimatriksdagen, or the Swedish Climate Parliament, previous chair of the organization. And the organization is a non-profit Swedish NGO. So I will go through my presentation. We'll dig in a little bit into how the climate parliament in Sweden works. As you said, Sanna, it's not a citizen assembly in its traditional sense. We have worked in a different way. But I picked up a quote there, Catherine. You said that one of the delegates or one of the members of your climate assembly had said that the process was awesome but exhausting. I think that pretty much everyone involved in the climate parliament can agree on that. The process was and is awesome but exhausting, but we can clearly see results of our work, which is the main thing. So I will share my presentation. Can you see it all right?
Yes.
Great. So the idea of the climate parliament came up in light of the 2014 general elections in Sweden, where a group of concerned Swedes in Norrköping sat down and tried to think about how on earth they could make politicians start talking about the climate issue in a serious manner and really make it a part of the general vote and of the debate in light of the general vote. So they looked back historically and thought that the people's parliaments for universal suffrage at the end of 19th century, they in the end managed to get through the universal suffrage in Sweden. We got that quite a bit later, but they managed. So they thought that if a people's parliament succeeded then, maybe we should try to repeat that idea and do the same thing. So that's when they started planning the 2014 climate parliament. They had quite limited time, and they managed to organize quite a huge event in Norrköping, which was well visited and got a lot of attention. So that was the climate parliament in 2014, and then we organized another climate parliament in 2018, and that work started in 2016. So we had 2 years that time and started up a new NGO and activated a lot of people in the work and in the planning of that. So the main objectives of the climate parliament is to put the climate issue on the political agenda and really make politicians talk about the climate. And the idea is to put pressure on all political parties, because what has happened historically is that only a few parties talk about the climate issue, but not all parties. So we have really, with our proposals, talked to all parties, and the idea is that all parties become more active in this issue. That has been a really important part. So in debates, etc., we always invite all parties. And the idea was also not only to create another NGO that talks about the climate issue, but really have this deliberative process that Catherine was talking about, and that is also the thing in citizen assemblies. So the idea was to produce and propose constructive political climate measures to the government and really show them the way forward and show them ways to go ahead and implement measures that really make a difference. And one of the main objectives is also to show politicians that they have support for these measures, because that, as we probably all know, is a big problem, that politicians are a bit scared to propose and implement these issues because they don't think they have enough support. So that's also one of the main objectives. Let's see if I can. I am stuck. So this is the climate parliament at work. The actual climate parliament, so Klimatriksdagen, the event, the climate parliament, is organized in light of general elections. So it's a 3-day event with the main purpose to sort out these proposals or motions that we then hand over to the politicians. So the deliberative process here is that quite a bit in advance, this process has seen a little bit different, has looked a little bit different depending on the different events, but quite a bit in advance, we go out with a request for climate motions, and anyone can write a climate motion and send into the climate parliament. We then have in the climate parliament, we have committees that work with these motions. So committees on different themes receive these proposals that can then be written by anyone. And they receive the proposals and they look at them. They might get back to the person who has written the motion and with constructive feedback to make the motion better. Perhaps some people have written a motion about the same thing and then they have been able to merge the motions. And the idea there is that the committee of the climate parliament works, helps the motion writer with the motion. And then once that step is closed or is passed, the motions are published for a common vote. And the vote in itself is then has taken place during this 3-day event. So everyone that visits the event and anyone who is a member of the climate parliament can then vote on which motions they think should be handed over to the politicians. So that is in an overview of the deliberative process. So the climate parliament in 2018 gathered around 1,000 people in Stockholm, delegates, exhibitors, speakers, journalists, a broad range of people. We had different seminars and debates. 250 motions were sent in before the actual event. And these motions were then, well, they had been processed beforehand and read beforehand of the committees. And during the actual climate parliament, they were processed by the committees again, and there was a discussion around the different motions in the committees during the climate parliament. And the committees during the climate parliament, they could vote on their favorites. So there was like a step where favorites were picked out. So for the ones that didn't have the time to read the 250 motions in detail, they could just look at the ones that were favored by the committees during the climate parliament. And anyone was invited to these committee discussions during the climate parliament. So it wasn't only the committees or the committee that had worked before the climate parliament, so to speak. We then voted and picked 12 winning motions that we handed over to our politicians or to the parliament. We had over 50 people working with the motions, working with the practical issues, contacts with media, etc., in light of the climate parliament. And right now we're very busy organizing the next climate parliament, and we are around the same number of people active right now with all the different parts of this process. So the idea from the beginning was really to have this event in light of general elections, and to, in the end, be able to hand over these motions that the people had voted on to our politicians. But after the 2018 climate parliament, we saw that there was really a need to keep up the steam and keep working with these motions that have been voted on, and also other issues. So we continued our work, and we have been quite active since 2018. And we always try to keep this democratic core of our work in mind. It's this is what makes the climate parliament unique, that we have this democratic process. We vote on these motions. This is what our members and the delegates of the climate parliament have. This is their will, so to speak. So we have worked with the motions that won the vote in 2018 up until now. And based on those motions, we have developed an emergency plan, which is more thorough, and we have also produced an EU call for action to the Swedish politicians going for the EU vote. And these documents are based on the motions that won in 2018. And once these documents have been developed, we have also put those documents out for comments from our members. So there's also a democratic process in that work. And you can see the photo here of our former Aid and Climate Minister Isabella Lövin, who holds up our emergency plan for the climate. We have, apart from that, been active in the public debate and arranged different kinds of seminars, published reports, etc. So apart from our democratic process and the climate parliament, the climate parliament, we have been quite active since 2018, but the core, the democratic core and the motions are really like the spinal cord of our organization. Looking at the similarities to climate assemblies and comparing the Swedish climate parliament to traditional climate assemblies, we can see that we have support by experts in the process of developing motions. So Catherine was talking about how in a climate assembly experts kind of lay out the base for the work, and that the climate assembly can invite experts in order to understand the issues fully. And the climate parliament and its committees do the same continuously. So we invite experts, we arrange seminars and ask these experts questions where we have doubts. So it's really important for the committees and for the organization to build that platform or that understanding to be able to publish and produce motions that are relevant. Another similarity is that we have no requirements of expert knowledge for participation. So anyone basically can join a committee. Of course, the people that join our committees have some kind of interest in the issue, but there's no filter. We won't say, no, you can't be on this committee because you don't know enough about transports. And then we also have the democratic process, which I already have been talking about, but that results in constructive proposals for political measures. So that is also one clear similarity to the climate assemblies. But looking at the differences, the climate parliament, as you have probably understood by now, but it's based on interest and involvement. So the people that start working with the climate parliament have a clear interest and concern for the climate issue. The process of selecting, we don't really select people that work for the climate parliament. Anyone can join basically. And the work is merely voluntary. So, well, there have been shorter time periods where we have been able to have someone working part-time, but basically it's 100% voluntary work. We don't have an official mandate from the government. So the government hasn't beforehand said that, please, can you come up with these proposals because we want to hear from you. We have given ourselves that mandate. So that's also one of the main differences. Another difference is that anyone can send a motion to us, to the climate parliament. You don't have to be involved in the process in any other way. You just need to have an idea for a motion. And it's a grassroots initiative, so it comes from concerned people and not from from above, so to speak. Challenges for us. One huge challenge which we see is inclusion and diversity and participation. We have worked actively to really mirror the society in our work and to have like a broad demographic representation in the climate parliament. It's difficult, as probably many of you know. We have tried using not only the traditional social media channels for climate, but also reaching out to other organizations and communicating through other forums in order to reach more people and get diverse participation. But this is a challenge. And this is something that we continue working with. We hope, in light of the 2022 climate parliament, to get a broader participation, of course, but we have decided for the motion writing to focus on social sustainability and the social issue, and focusing more on how the transformation can be done. And by doing so, we hope being able to involve other groups of people in society that can contribute to that work. Another challenge is what I also already mentioned briefly, but the legitimacy, so that the lack of official mandate from the government. We have given ourselves that mandate, and we think we have done quite well. We have a foot in the door to the politicians, and we have their ear, but there is no official order from the politicians that they want us to do this work and that they want our proposals. So that's also always something we have to struggle with, or at least initially. Another challenge is funding and the fact that coordination and all work is voluntary based. So these events that we organize that are crucial for the democratic process, of course, they require funding in order to be able to go through with them. So that's another, apart from working with the democratic process and the actual issues here, that's also something that we have to invest a lot of time in finding funding. Just a little slide here at the end to brag about achievements. But it's quite great to see that a grassroots initiative such as the Climate Parliament reaches the Swedish Parliament. So after 2018, our winning motions were debated in the Swedish Parliament. You saw the picture of Isabella Lövin showing our emergency plan. Our emergency plan was debated in the Swedish Parliament. So we can actually see that the politicians, they receive our proposals and they take them into account. And then we also, apart from these debates in the Swedish Parliament, we managed to get response from the politicians on our political motions. So after 2018, for example, we sent all parties the winning motions and got their comments in writing that is published on our website. So it's that dialogue that we have managed to set up quite successfully, and we think at least it's quite exciting. So that was just a brief introduction to our work at the Climate Parliament. Here's our contact details. would be great to see more people join us for the 2022 Climate Parliament. There's quite a lot of exciting work ahead of us, and of course we look forward to get the politicians to listen to us even more this time, and for our work to be given even more weight. So I think I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Karin. That was really interesting to hear about, really exciting. We're gonna have a short break now, and then we're gonna have time to answer a lot of the questions that have been asked in the chat, and also hear a discussion between you two, the two initiatives that we've been listening to. So just, yeah, a couple of minutes. Let's meet here at 9:52 and maybe that's enough time if people want to register to the workshop that we're going to have on Thursday. That's going to be more practical and stretch your legs a bit. So see you soon. Hope everyone had a nice break. Are you back as well, Karin?
Yes,
Great.
I'm back.
Great. So we've had a lot of very interesting questions, and we're going to try to answer as many of them as possible in this panel that we have. And of course, if there's anything remaining, you're free to contact us after, and we can continue having discussions. I also saw that Matthias wrote in the chat that we have a forum on Civic Tech where we can continue discussions as well. So we thought that maybe we could start by talking about the recruitment process and who actually participated in both in the Danish Assembly as well as Klimatriksdagen, because we had a lot of questions connected to that. And for the Assembly, it's interesting to know, like, what does the recruitment process look like? How do you choose the people? What demographic criteria do you base the recruitment on? And for Klimatriksdagen, it would be interesting to know, since it's based on a volunteer basis and people being interested, what groups do you see are not engaging in the process, and how could you change that for the next Klimatriksdagen so that you have a more broader participation? Maybe Katrin, you want to start by the recruitment process?
Yes, I'll do that. We followed the criteria set up in the method of citizen assembly to use random selection. And that is, of course, to reflect society in the best possible way, as some of the main criteria about gender, education, age, geography, where you stay in the country. And the recruitment process was done by the Statistics Denmark, that is a government statistic office, and it was arranged by the ministry. So actually the DBT, Danish Board of Technology, we didn't have anything to do with the process, but I know about the process. And the way it happened was that the Statistics Denmark wrote to 5,000 Danish people randomly, totally random. And in Denmark, we are a highly digitalized society, so far most people have the digital postbox. So most of those invitations were sent out to the e-box, the digital postbox, and 500 of them are excluded the digital postbox for some reason, so they got a letter in their physical postbox. And in the letter, it explained about the process, and it asked citizens to say yes to 3 concrete weekend dates that they were very available there. And then around 10% of the 5,000 people contacted said yes, they would like to be part of this. And that is, I think, quite normal, that around 10% will accept the invitation. The Statistics Denmark, they followed up with the phone calls to those people they didn't hear from. So it's not only the written invitations, but they also got a phone call. So out of this 10%, we have to choose the 99 members of the assembly, and that's where we look at criteria of income, educational background, gender, where you come from in Denmark. I actually have, I will do it very brief, but I have some slides about that. And the aim is, of course, to reflect the Danish society, the way it looks, and it was almost possible. Here you see the gender. The Borgertinget is the citizen assembly. We have 47% men, 55% women, and the population as such is 49% men and 51% women. And in that line, we have also statistics on the age. To the right, we have statistics on the education and the income. And exactly on the education and the income is where we differ the most from the population as such. As you see, we have 24 members with a university degree, a lang videregående uddannelse, and 12% of the general population have the university degree. So, and on the other side of the income, the highest income group, more than 400,000 Danish kroner per year, 20% of the citizen assembly had that, and only 10% of the general population. So from the gross sample we had that were willing to take part, there is a kind of what in the university people call the self-selection, that is not possible to meet the criteria 100%. With that, at least with that sample we had of only contacting 5,000 people in the first place. If we had contacted maybe 20,000 people, it would have been possible to meet the representativeness in a higher degree. But it's attempted to reflect the population, and likewise also on region, where do you stay, your occupation. We found out that it was very difficult to recruit women, middle-aged women from the southeastern part of Denmark. So they were a bit lacking in the sample, but apart from that, we had to do with a very broad group of Danish people. We felt it because we were in the same room with them, that there were really people from all social groups, also concerning their occupation, their interests. We didn't use any screening question in Denmark as to where they would place themselves in the climate debate, if they were skeptics or they were climate activists. We didn't use that questions. I know that in the UK they did, but it's not maybe very Danish to ask about that. So, but we found out in the group we had to do with that, they covered the whole spectrum. There were people that were quite skeptical, and there were people that were really, really engaged. And also ages, we had young ones, teenagers, 18, 19-year-old people, we had older people. So we had a diverse group.
Yeah, that's what's interesting about Assemblies, right? That you have this people from all walks of life in one room, or in a digital room in this case during Corona. So that's really interesting. Thank you for answering that. So Karin, the same, not the exact same question for you, but so we've been talking beforehand about that, like it's more difficult maybe when you don't have the same type of sampling, but it's based on interest. What do you see are the challenges in that? You talked a bit about inclusion in your presentation, but maybe you want to elaborate a bit about what type of groups you see you need to be able to engage more, and maybe how, if you have thoughts on that for the next process that you're going to do.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, inclusion for us has been a huge challenge, because we see that our proposals and the weight of our proposals will increase if we have more diversity and more groups in society represented. In light of the 2018 climate parliament, we tried to use reference groups, and we had great ambitions of working with more reference groups, but in the end we had one reference group for young people. So we reached out to different organizations where typically young people are involved, and tried to get them involved in the work with the climate parliament, because that, I mean, one thing that we saw quite early was that the middle age of the people that were involved in the climate parliament was rather high. So that was one measure that we took that we thought was quite successful. And we also, the way we organized the climate parliament, we tried to make it attractive to different groups of society. So maybe not everyone wants to sit in a plenary discussion on motions for a full day, but they can vote on the motions that are then proposed, like the favorite motions, and then anyway, even if they aren't like active in all the debates beforehand, they have their say once we go to the vote. So we try to have like a diverse event that could be attractive to more people, and that had a little bit of everything. And also with the preparations, I mean, we had media people working with communication, people that were good at that, and they could use those skills and then equally be a part of the vote. So we got we included their voices like that. But now, in light of the next climate parliament, it's really something that we have in mind. And we, as I said in my presentation, we try to contact and reach out to organizations and groups that don't typically work on the climate issue, but have other questions that they struggle with and work with, but where we can really see that the climate issue could be something where we could hook up and work on together. So that is one thing, to get like a wider or a better diversity doing that, and also using channels where not only climate active people are represented, but also other groups in society. One thing that we have seen with this pandemic, I mean, it's been very challenging for us all, but the digital format for us has been, I mean, we had video meetings before Corona as well, but now I think we see a more geographical spread in our committees and in our work. So that has been like come to our benefit in a way. But it's really yeah, some important work we have ahead of us, and we are really trying to figure out how to best get that diversity and the demographic representation that.
Thanks a lot, Catherine, for your answer. I think that's where there's a lot of experience to maybe extend, and it's really interesting to see how you deal with it, Karin, and Klimatriksdagen, especially in a context where you don't set it in stone at the beginning. So you need to do an active work around it. I think we also had a lot of questions about mandate and how would the recommendations from Klimatriksdagen and the Danish Climate Assembly be taken into account at the political level by representative democracy. And I had a question that I think fits exactly for both of you regarding exactly the mandates that maybe you managed to get initially. And I think for both of you, you had to kind of get that mandate by putting pressure on politicians about Klimatriksdagen, but also for the Danish Climate Assembly, and maybe also a follow-up question on how that mandate evolved as the process was unfolding. So as you saw representative democracy gain a higher awareness of what was discussed? Did that mandate evolve, and did you get further commitments or interest from the representative democracy side? I don't know, Karin, if you want to start maybe with Klimatriksdagen.
Yeah, sure. I think the fact that I mean 2014 it was more of the challenge because it was the first time, but it has been. I mean, the fact that we haven't been given this task by government officials that has made it more difficult, but it has. The result of the climate parliaments has always been received in a good way. But I mean, the fact that no politicians beforehand have said that we will take this into account is, of course, yeah, it's a hurdle. But perhaps it's also like a motivator for the people that write the motions and for the democratic process, because they know that the motions will be put on the politicians' tables, and they can be quite free in writing these motions. But I mean, of course, it would be great to have that mandate a little bit more official also for us. Actually, there was a motion last autumn from some members of parliaments to start up with citizen assemblies in Sweden, but it was denied, that motion.
Catherine, maybe you have something to add. I know you had some form of mandate, but I've tried to read in Danish also pretty broad of like, we will listen or we will read what you get. And so that's also interesting because it's maybe not that far actually from what Klimatriksdagen had. So how did it evolve and what actually happened? Now I know you finished, now you published your recommendations. So now we may be starting to see the political sphere react. What's the feel of it?
Yeah, it's actually a really central question. I can see so in the chat that there's a big interest in the mandate, and it is really important for the whole legacy or the whole impact of these climate assemblies that there are politicians ready to receive the results, ready to react to it. Of course, and also not to waste the time of the involving citizens. OECD that has developed the 11 principles for good democratic, good practice for deliberative democracy. They have 11 principles, and principle number 2 is accountability, and that it is exactly principle of the commissioning authority that has to publicly respond to the recommendations. And another alternative way is to follow or explain, either to follow all the recommendations or to explain why they don't follow it. On the formal side, I can say the mandate in Denmark was not very strong, actually. That is also something that the critics on the sideline from, for instance, the climate movement in Denmark, they are pinpointing that the ministry didn't officially give any promises in advance before launching it. That was on one hand. On the other hand, you can say that the Climate Assembly was commissioned by the Parliament by law. The Parliament financed it, and they actually asked for the Citizen Assembly to give them recommendations. So in that invitation lies a kind of commitment, although it's not written down like a formal mandate. We have had 2 meetings with the ministry, with the Committee of Climate and Energy in the process, one in the beginning, one at the end, where the politicians listen to the assembly members, ask them questions, and in the end receive their recommendations. Now, as part of the concept, the committee is going to write a report back to the Climate Assembly, and of course we are awaiting that report with excitement. There's there's no format for this report. So we can't be sure that they are going to respond to each and every recommendation, but we know that we will get a written report sometime. But I think compared, for instance, to the French Climate Assembly, where President Macron promised in advance that he would either pass the recommendations to the parliament or make them directly into law, that was really a strong mandate. We don't know what actually happens, but that was a strong mandate, and we can't say to have the same strong mandate in Denmark. But it's really important issue about the accountability and the ownership and the mandate.
Yeah, thank you for that answer. For those of you who don't know, what's interesting about the French Climate Assembly is actually that, yeah, maybe Pierre is answering in the chat as well. A lot of the assembly members became activists in the end, and they're actually pushing for the government to be even more progressive. And I think, yeah, Pierre is adding some information about that if you're interested in reading up a bit about that. I thought we could maybe talk a bit about the deliberation process itself. Because you both had, I mean, both Klimatriksdagen and Assembly had, one of the purposes was for people to deliberate with each other. And so I'm quite curious about, I thought I saw a couple of questions about what happened if conflicts arose, how did the members handle that, of having different opinions? How do you create a good climate in terms of deliberation? How did the views change or shift among the members? I know that you didn't ask in Denmark, you didn't ask about the views of that the members had. So maybe you don't know that, but did you notice any shift during the deliberation processes of people changing their minds? I saw that there was a question about carbon taxes, for example, whether people from different income levels were as interested in that issue. How did people convince each other, for example? And the same for Klimatriksdagen, like how did that deliberation process look like, and how did you create an environment for debate among people? So maybe if Catherine wants to answer first this time.
Yes. The deliberation is based on receiving information from both experts, but also from your peer assembly members. And in that process, we saw opinions changing. We saw, for the first, that the knowledge grew and the complexity grew, but also that opinions actually were changing. There was one young woman of 25 years. She has said this in an interview with a newspaper. She mentioned that she came into the assembly. She's liberal oriented, not liberal in the American sense, but in Denmark we use it as she's conservative liberal. She was actually against this about the carbon taxes. But during the first time, she actually changed a view to think that carbon taxes is an effective tool. And some of the other ones, they have members that have also expressed how they have actually been more open for solutions. Some have also mentioned that they started to be rather pessimistic, or in despair somehow, that hopeless about what can we do at all, that things are the climate is changing and there's not so much to do. And they ended up seeing, oh, there are a lot of possible solutions. It's just to get started. We have the solutions already, and to be more filled with hope. That is, several of our members have expressed that viewpoints. And the whole democratic process is also really interesting to observe from the sideline. We had our citizen assembly in Denmark was a kind of mixture between the consensus conference that we have developed in Denmark, and as the word says, in consensus conference, the group of citizens reach consensus. and what they deliver is 100% supported by the members. You can't do that when you have 99 citizens. So a citizen assembly is normally with votings in the end, a lot of votings to show percentage, how many percentage supported this and this and this. But we actually work with a kind of mixture that we have editorial groups working on the recommendations, on the text, and within that editorial group of 4, 5, 6 people, they have to agree on the recommendations. So they have to formulate a recommendation where everybody can see themselves. And then the editorial group passes on their recommendation to the Citizen Assembly, and the Citizen Assembly as such, all members vote. So in our report, it shows that these 19 recommendations, how many percentage of the Citizen Assembly voted yes or no. And then underneath each and every recommendation was passed with this and this percentage. And it reached between 75 and 99% yes votes. So that was a democratic exercise. But I think assembly members were really open for good arguments from their peer assembly members to reflect themselves in an open environment, and also to receive input and to create their own standpoints. And we all the time told them, you listen to a lot of experts, but you are not experts yourself. You're not supposed to know all the technical solutions. You speak from exactly the daily life citizen expert that you are, and you choose what to take in from the true experts.
Thanks a lot, Catherine. I was actually at one of the meetings for Klimatriksdagen, so I still remember the discussion a little bit. But Catherine, how do you remember? The discussion, the deliberation about motions and the vote. How did you manage to create a good climate for that climate parliament meeting?
Yeah, it was quite exciting in 2018 with the different committees and their work. The biggest challenge was really to find that democratic process that everyone was fine with. So we had a lot of meetings discussing, how to set up that democratic process, and we weren't always agreeing on that. But so there were some quite exciting meetings discussing that. When it came to once we set that democratic process and we all agreed to how we were going to do it, and started debating the topics. I think it was, since everyone was there on their spare time and were voluntarily engaged in the work, we were very we made sure that we respected each other's time, because it's really easy to just walk out the door when no one is paying you to be there. So it's really important to respect each other's time and respect each other's opinions. Of course, for Klimatriksdagen, or for the climate parliament, we had the common denominator that everyone was agreeing on the emergency and the climate issue, so there weren't any discussions there. When we had differences and couldn't agree, we tried to call in experts, and we still do that, and have tried to discuss and get help from experts in order to get a broader understanding and to finally agree on the solutions and reach consensus. But yeah, challenging and interesting.
Yeah, but I can see a lot of similarities, I think, in the process. And as you said, there's also a lot that the participants need to make the set of rules, but they need to agree on the setup. Maybe I think we've made the choice of giving you long time to answer questions. So we're starting to approach the end of this session, unfortunately. So we will publish all the questions in the forum, and we will also try to have a follow-up discussion and to answer them. I think a lot of the questions are also general questions about how climate assemblies work and can be organized. And in that case, I really encourage you also to register for the next workshop on Thursday, because this is a 2-hour session where we will have really a lot of time to go more in details. I had a last question, I think, Karin, about framtid. I think that's the same word in Swedish or Danish, the future. You gave glimpse of what the future looked like in your own context, but maybe could you tell us a little bit more about what's up next, and also what you see citizens, what part you see citizens take in climate solutions in the future. I don't know if you want to start, Karin, and maybe Catherine can close.
So the future for the climate parliament. Sorry, Pierre.
Yeah, I think so, and maybe the involvement of citizens in drafting climate solutions in general. I think beyond the how do you see the future look like for this type of processes, like Klimatriksdagen or?
Yeah. I think being invited to this seminar and having these discussions with this type of climate assemblies in mind, of course, we have had our discussions in the climate parliament as well about a broader deliberation process. So this discussion will definitely continue. For the process next year, we have an idea of broadening the vote so that more people can finally vote and not and getting their voices heard. So it's we definitely see that there's an interesting element here with the climate assemblies, and the idea maybe of involving that concept in our work as well. But this will be a process and up for discussions for us. But with the motions for next year, we will go out and ask for motions this coming fall, and we are in the middle of the process of formulating the questions there. So that will be very, very exciting. So yeah, we have a lot to look forward to.
Great. Yeah, that sounds like there's a lot of discussions that need to happen. Yeah. Catherine, how does it look for you in Denmark? Yeah, what can you tell us about the future for this climate assembly? Maybe the follow-up, and maybe also, yeah, as it planted seeds for other processes in the future.
Yes, one of the recommendations from this climate assembly was actually to make it a climate assembly permanent in Denmark, and to establish local climate assembly in the municipalities. They were really, really engaged in all this awareness they gained and the impact on their daily lives. So they say, oh, if everybody just had the same knowledge as we do now, we want that for every Danish persons, then it will make it easier to act in our own lives, and also to give our politicians the support they need to take the necessary decisions. So they really, really urge for more processes like this to happen. So of course, in the Danish Board of Technology, we agree about this importance of those processes. Unfortunately, the Climate Assembly didn't attract so much media attention, maybe because of the pandemic situation, I don't know, but it would be very interesting if the next phase we enter to in the autumn, where the same Climate Assembly will continue its work, get a bit more media attention to make it to spread the word also to other ordinary citizens that are not involved themselves. then I really like Karin's idea about connecting citizen assembly with the more grassroots initiatives. I think that will have some great potentials, because the citizen assembly are a bit independent and isolated, and they should be. That's part of the method. But it would be so interesting to, in one way or the other, connect it to grassroots initiatives like Karin's. I see that would be so interesting to continue on that line.
Great. Well, yeah, I think that's really interesting to follow as well. And I think if we can find connections between Denmark and Sweden, that would also be amazing to kind of continue that work and see work together, as we know that our two countries already have a lot of contacts. So I think, again, when you mention local climate assemblies, yeah, we really can't recommend you enough to come on Thursday to our event, because we will also try to adapt the workshop, whether you want to maybe frame a national climate assembly, a bit more similar to Klimatriksdagen or the Danish one, or a more local one, maybe in the context of your region or a specific climate or environmental problematic that you have in your city or your region. So I think now is time to close this session. Unfortunately, it was really amazing to have you here, Catherine and Karin. So thank you so much for coming and bringing us your knowledge. As we said, the discussion will continue in the forum, and we have this other session. I'm gonna try and share my screen so you can see the dates. But we will have a second session that will be a workshop where you can create your own climate assembly, and we'll keep you informed on the forum of all the follow-up that this event will have. Don't hesitate to reach out if that event motivated you to push for a topic, or to join Klimatriksdagen and help them to draft their 2022 process. I saw that Pernilla also shared some link. I know that Klimatriksdagen is partner in a really interesting conference on CO2 budgets that's coming up next week, so definitely check that out. Yeah, and I don't know if I had anything more to say. Yes, Anna, maybe if you want to add something. Otherwise,
I just want to say thank you to our amazing speakers. It was great listening to you, super interesting. And I hope to keep in contact with everyone that participated today as well. So keep having discussions together. Yeah.
So as we said, the forum is the best way, but also you can reach out to us directly, and we will post the presentations of our speakers and the contact details in the forum. So definitely reach out to them as well if that inspired you to help or to build things together. And this talk is also recorded, so it will be on Facebook and YouTube shortly, or already now on Facebook. Yes, have a nice rest of your morning, everyone, and we hope to see you on Thursday for a great workshop to get a bit more in the details of how you actually build your climate assembly.